When do you deserve higher pay? Everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia, one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. And now on to our topic. When do you deserve higher pay? Okay, this topic has been on my mind for years. It's come to me in different seasons for different reasons. That rhymed. But during the prolonged double strikes of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA, boom, it has finally come into focus in terms of how I want to present it. And I'm going to talk about myself for a bit. Feels a little weird, a little ego-driven. Why do I deserve to be paid above scale? Oh, and for the newer folks to the industry out there, or my mom who might be watching, scale just refers to the minimum required payment that an actor must receive on a union project. Now, if you're auditioning for a non-union project, hopefully as a non-union actor, then there is nothing to govern how much you're going to get paid. You will have to negotiate that, you or your agent. But on a union project, which is the vast majority of anything you're ever going to see on television or film, save for reality TV and a few other low-budget projects, SAG-AFTRA has fought very hard for decades to ensure a fair minimum wage for actors. That's great, but like in corporate America or the sports world or literally every other profession known to man, you shouldn't expect to keep getting paid the bare minimum for your entire career. That said, 20 plus years into this career, I still face the conundrum regularly of work for scale or don't work at all. And at the risk of sounding like a whiny prepubescent teen who just wants to go over to Chad's house for a few hours to play Super Nintendo, let me make my case, and by extension the case for scads of other actors, of why I deserve to be paid above scale for every job I do in the future. Seriously. All right, so before I make my argument, let's first put you, the viewer, in the shoes of the producer who has just put together the budget for this project. It is a juggling act because on a micro scale, you have to figure out how long each scene will take to shoot and factor in every department contributing to that scene and how much money it's going to cost to keep them on set. It's a lot. And from this money standpoint, this corporate standpoint, every single dollar matters when you're staring at this budget. And because you're so worried about this budget, you have no desire to pay anyone more than the bare minimum you're required to pay them. So imagine you're a producer who's in charge of the budget, sitting there, and suddenly someone from the casting department comes in and says, "Hey, sorry to bother you, but Matthew Cornwell is asking for more money." To which you reply, "Who?" And they say, "Exactly. He's been offered the role of attorney, shoots one day in our courtroom scene." And then you quickly cross-reference and reply, "No, it's a co-star. He's got, what, 8 lines? Who does he think he is?" And then you both laugh. So from that standpoint, you can see why I am faced with this dilemma of being offered scale for roles that might only have a couple scenes or still be considered co-stars. And quite honestly, when I'm in their shoes, I understand the take it or leave it mentality. If I ask for more, they just threaten to move on to the next actor who will work for scale. And threaten is probably the wrong word, but that's how it feels from the actor standpoint. And this is where it gets harder to make my case because from that producer's standpoint, the budget looks fixed. It looks set in stone. After all, they work so darn hard on that budget. But any producer knows that the budget is fluid. Heck, I once had to go home from an on-location shoot because their generator died, and they had to reschedule the entire day of work a week later, bringing everyone back. That was very expensive. Another job that I did, or actually didn't do, was canceled because a tornado came close to set, pushing back the work that day, and the budget was too small. They had to just cancel our scene. Producers know things will happen. They factor this into their contingency budget. And when they're acts of God, no one can predict or prevent them. But, this is where my argument really starts. If you were to hire a worker at scale, at that minimum payment, in literally any other industry, what should you expect to get as a return for that payment? Well, something commensurate with a starting salary, a newbie, a rookie, a first-timer on set, or maybe someone who's only had a few experiences on set. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it does mean that you might have to factor in extra time to accommodate that newer actor who hasn't gotten their sea legs yet, who doesn't know how to respond to curveballs thrown at them on set in the moment. So now, as that producer, that one choice to hire that new actor could result in you blowing the budget for that role, all because you tried to save a few bucks up front. Okay, so I'm talking in generalities. Let me get very specific by going through my own IMDb page. I'm not going to share titles or actors as I go through these stories, but if you really want to do the sleuthing, head to my IMDb page and try to follow along, although I'm not going to go in chronological order. Okay, so for this job, Brooke and I were brought in at scale to improvise a lead-in to a highly emotional scene that took place in a group therapy setting at a rehab clinic. There were no scripted lines, and so Brooke and I just sort of did our thing, and the result, they had to rewrite the dialogue for the main actors because we were so believable. And spoiler alert, in the finished product, they played music over our footage to not distract from the main actors. And we got paid scale. In this film, speaking of improv, the director barely ever did anything as scripted. They like to immediately jump into improv, which made for a really fun day on set for someone like me who at that point had 10 years of improv training. But the new actor who has not done any improv training, that could have been a nightmare, and that might have slowed things down. At the very least, that actor would not have given this director what I was able to give with that training and experience, which was many options to choose from in the editing room that allows that director to either continue mining for more jokes in the scene or to move on because we got it. Incidentally, that movie was released twice with 2 different sets of punchlines in theaters. Yet I only got paid scale for one of those. This is an oldie but a goodie. It was a highly choreographed walk and talk. I was a soldier. We were in Iraq. And right before we started shooting, the lead actor decided to cut one of his own lines, which is fine. That's his prerogative. But we had this highly choreographed walk and talk. So when he removed that line, it changed the timing. And we didn't get any more rehearsals, so I had to make the adjustments on the fly as we started rolling to keep that set running smoothly. For scale. This is a fun one. In this film, I was hired as a regular actor, but then was asked to do a minor fighting stunt with the lead. And I guess I was so convincing that they mistakenly credited me as a stunt person in the end credits. If I hadn't had years of martial arts training, then I wouldn't have been able to take that kick to the groin. Don't worry, there were safety measures in place, or fall to the ground believably. And so an actor without that experience might have slowed production down considerably. At the very least, they would have had to shoot alternate angles or cut around the action, or in the end, just hire a stunt person to replace that actor. All of that takes time and potentially a lot of money. But I nailed it, or I got nailed, for scale. Okay, in this TV show, it was another walk and talk. I was stationed between one of the lead actors and another day player who was basically in the same boat as me in terms of number of lines and number of scenes. However, there were 3 cameras running during this scene trying to capture all the angles. And I kept getting notes from the different camera people saying, "Hey, Matthew, I need you to move here. You're being obscured by this character or that character." Now, I was actually doing what I was supposed to be doing, but the other day player would not hit his mark consistently. So he kept causing problems for me that I had to keep trying to overcompensate for in the moment just to get the footage for that scene. Now, I could have thrown my fellow actor under the bus, but instead I chose to be the professional and just figured it out, kept that scene running, because that's what an overscale actor does. Wait, I'm being told that I was paid scale for that too. Side note, that other actor had come in from LA. So unless they lied about being local to Atlanta, then production paid airfare, per diem, hotel, all for someone who didn't have the same level of experience that I did, who got paid scale. Okay, so in this TV series, I was playing a lawyer who was having this clandestine meeting with some other person, and I had to park this SUV out in the middle of this field. Well, in the closer shots, I had to do a precision car move where I had to park perfectly between these 2 C-stands so as to not destroy some very expensive film equipment and potentially damage the van or the SUV that I was driving as well. And so I could have asked for a stunt driver to take care of that. But once again, that would have slowed things down. And if they didn't have someone on set who reasonably looked like me to be sort of a stunt double, then it would have just cost a lot of money and unnecessarily delayed production. Seems like a small thing, but it can be nerve-wracking to suddenly be asked to park a car precisely without damaging thousands of dollars of film equipment. Oh, and then to get out of that car and deliver your lines of dialogue in a cool manner, looking confident and calm like my character was. And I did that for scale. And speaking of stunts, there was a scene I did in a television series where my character was placed at gunpoint from behind and then thrown to the ground. Now, there was no scripted dialogue during that interchange. So while we were rehearsing, I threw in some ad libs of like, hey, man, take it easy. What are you doing? Director said, don't do that. Just stick to the script. Fine. I was just trying to make it natural because that's what I would do if someone suddenly surprised me from behind. And cut to about 6-7 months later, sure enough, I was called in to do ADR and add in those very lines that the director told me not to do. So here I was trying to save money on set by keeping the scene running smoothly. And in the end, I had to be called in. They had to pay me for an ADR session. So I guess I got paid scale plus ADR for that one. But, it was unnecessary. For this recent booking, I was handed a gun on my first day of shooting that went into a holster, but the holster was on my right hip. So I told the gentleman, sorry, I'm left-handed. And he responded, ooh, I don't have a left-handed holster. So I had the prerogative to say, well, we're at an impasse. No one told me that I was going to have to do this right-handed. No one asked me if I was left-handed or right-handed. So you're going to have to find me a left-handed holster. And that would have taken time because he clearly didn't have one and he'd have to find one. But instead, I spent my hour that I had before the first shot was up learning how to draw my firearm with my non-dominant hand, which I had never attempted before that day. And that's not a trivial thing to do, to be able to draw a firearm in a believable manner because I was playing law enforcement, and to do it while also worrying about my lines and the blocking and everything else going on a major set. So by being a professional and figuring it out in the moment, I saved that production time and money. And that's what you do when you're above. Nope, still got paid scale. Oh, and one final example for good measure, and this time I'll actually show some footage. In this scene, it takes place at a TV station, and I was playing like an editor/producer of this nightly news broadcast. Well, they wanted to do this practically. So in other words, the actors were actually on the set on the other side of that wall in this television station. So instead of doing this as special effects later, they wanted to have live switching of the cameras right there in the control room. And the employee who actually worked at this television station was supposed to be the one who did that. But once the director set the blocking of where I was going to sit and where everyone else is going to be stationed, director left and the employee said, oh, so where you're sitting, that's the only console that can do what they want. So I had to spend the next 20, 30 minutes learning how to do live switching for this news broadcast. So everything in that clip that you see, the different correspondence showing up on screen, the graphics coming up on screen, all of that was done by me legitimately live in that shot, all while trying to remember dialogue and such. Now, in the director's defense, when he found out what was happening, it was too late. And I heard him say to someone else, why is the actor doing that? But I can report that I nailed it every single take, never slowed down that set 1 second. All for scale. My point? In each of these examples, I saved time. And time, as we know, is money. If you do some back of the envelope calculations, it's reasonable to estimate that a regular budget set spends anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, maybe even upwards of $10,000 per minute to keep a set running. That's a lot of money. Now, in some of these examples, I save production a full day. In most of them, it's a nebulous 5 minutes here, 10 minutes, maybe an hour or 3. It's hard to quantify what a hypothetical newbie would have done to stall production. I get it. But if I saved each of these productions even 1 minute, which is a gross underestimate, then shouldn't that expertise, that ability to problem solve, be compensated in some way? Shouldn't it be worth more than scale? Now, I hope these examples didn't come across as bragging or humble bragging or even whining. That was not my intent. Because in all of these examples, I could have spoken up if I wasn't comfortable with the dialogue, the blocking, the physicality, the props, etc. But I didn't complain. I felt comfortable in each of these situations to do what was asked of me and to do it well and to do it efficiently. And that is my point. An actor with experience won't stall production. They will problem solve in a collaborative way to keep the set running smoothly. And when done as a local actor, it makes me look good, my agent, the local casting office, and the entire market. And 99% of the time, you're not even aware that the money was being saved, which is sort of inherently the problem, because the above scale actor will do it with ease. It's only when you hire that newbie who's just not ready for prime time and they fall apart on set and you get delayed in your production, you're going into overtime, you end up having to shoot around them or recast them or just cut the scene altogether, that you realize, oh, in trying to save a few bucks, we ended up spending a whole lot more. So when an actor like myself brings 20 years or more of experience to the table, along with a skill set that they have amassed over those 20 plus years to make the hard look easy, well, I'll let you do the math. And the classic response from producers by way of casting is, sorry, we don't have it in the budget, which is really a short-sighted, flawed argument, as I've just pointed out with many, many examples. In all of my examples, they offered me scale, presumably because they didn't have it in the budget. And in defense of casting, in most of those cases, casting would have liked to have paid me more. They know I deserve to be paid more, but they don't hold the purse strings. Someone else does, the producers that are above them. So they can only do so much in this situation. But in all those cases, they would have exceeded the budget they had allotted for my role if they had cast a newbie who just didn't have the experience or cracked under the pressure, which means that on countless other sets, productions are going over budget because they try to hire people at scale, and they would have saved money if they had just hired more experienced actors at slightly above scale. And here's the thing, I'm not saying that I should be paid $5,000 more per day for that minute that I might save. Gee, wouldn't that be nice? We're only talking a couple $100s a day. It's more a symbol of respect, an acknowledgement that yes, you deserve to be compensated up front for the skills and experience that you bring to set. And I do fully support that many of those under 5 co-star roles should be booked at scale. When it's a utility character that isn't really driving the story, then it becomes a lot lower of a risk to hire a new actor that may or may not perform at a high level on set, because you can cut around it, you can work around it. And so if they want to save money by hiring that new actor at scale, I fully endorse this. That's how I got my start. That's how almost all actors get their start. But I can tell from the sides alone that even those under 5 co-stars sometimes aren't as simple as you think. And there must be scrutiny applied as to whether or not a new actor, an inexperienced actor, can handle that load. And if I can figure that out by looking at the sides alone, I know casting and producers already have that information in hand when they are in the casting process. So after all this talking, what's the moral to the story? Well, I think I laid out a pretty cogent, detailed argument for why at least I deserve to be paid above scale on all future jobs. And by extension, actors in the same position as me that have years of experience and a skill set that warrant that above scale pay. It's not about ego, and it's not just about respect or acknowledging my years of experience. It's that you will save time and money that will more than recoup that bump in pay that you give me. It's economics 101. That said, I know what casting folks, if by some miracle they're still watching, might say in response to this video. The gentler ones will say, sometimes we just don't have it in the budget, period. So don't take any offense to the fact that we're offering this at scale. The less gentler ones will say, don't audition if you're not willing to work at scale, which is a flawed argument because negotiations can't start until the offer happens. So I have every right to audition for a role, fully knowing that I won't accept scale if that is what the only offer is. But I am a team player, and sometimes I just want to work, so I'm willing to play ball. But then that mentality multiplied over 160,000 SAG-AFTRA members is how we got to the strike in the first place. We all got lulled into the lie of believing, well, that's just the way it is. It was our collective willingness to take one for the team simply because we didn't want to be difficult and that we believed in the overall art form. while the studios are raking in millions of dollars on the backs of actors like me who are over-delivering. It's unbalanced, but it's what the suits count on. They claim to be cash poor at the time of negotiation. Meanwhile, they're doing the backstroke in their silos full of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck. Yay, capitalism. And hey, any cast directors still watching, again, bless your heart, I want to address the fact that you often get written off as the villain in this story. But I know you're caught in the middle. You love actors, but you're also working for the producers, and you would like to work for them again. So you are faced with your own set of dilemmas. I get it. And so in the end, I know I'm screaming into the wind here. And with a video this long, the only folks who are likely still watching are the ones who are in agreement with me, which doesn't really affect change. And that's okay. I like our little YouTube channel tucked away on the corner of the internet. Whew. Wow, that is it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set. Hopefully above scale.